Straight swords. A classic part of the Dark Souls arsenal. These bad boys are reliable weapons with excellent flexibility, and I almost always find myself loving them when I start a playthrough. Ranking these was only really difficult because of the large number of them, and if I may be honest, some of these are really commendable, and some are just meh. Even so, every build can probably find some use with at least one straight sword. I mean, unless you are the first one on this list. And that first one just so happens to be number 17, the Broken Straight Sword. Oh my gosh, dude, I don't even think this should be on this list because this thing is a dagger with the name sword attached to it. I am really upset about that because, in my opinion, this thing is literally horrible. You could have put the Corbian Great Knife here instead of this weapon, and I'm pretty sure people would have been more happy with that decision. This thing just doesn't deserve to be called a straight sword. No reliability, horrible damage. It's not even worth it. Like, it's a meme weapon. Don't use this thing. Number 16, the short sword. Alright, so this dagger is basic, or not dagger, this sword is basic. But the reason why I called it a dagger there was because this thing has very short range. As the name would suggest. Even so, when you're losing out to other, just more reliable options that you get much earlier on, I'm not really going to spare you a second glance. This thing loses out to some of the daggers in range and in damage. And if you're losing to daggers as a straight sword, then we're gonna have some problems, man. That being said, it does get an S on a few infusions, and it's a very reliable weapon with some great thrusting potential. It still doesn't do crap compared to the rest of the list. Number 15, Valor Heart. Oh my gosh, it pains me to put this low, but this weapon is just too bad objectively. The entire weapon design is cool. It's the only paired weapon that's something on one hand and something completely different on the other. If you don't know, Valor Heart is a shield and sword combo, which is pretty dang good, or rather that's what you would think, but in reality it's not that excellent. The shield seems to underperform and so does the sword, but it does have some cool attacks and looks super cool. That's why I'm upset by it. It has a fun moveset that's really interesting, and considering you get it from the DLC, Ashes of Ariandel, it's not too bad. However, the damage is only okay on a good build. The skill is interesting, the concept is cool, but for most players it's just not going to be worth the investment for how late in the game you get it. It's fun, it makes for super cool combat, but it really does lack the power that most other straight swords have. Number 14, the Astora Straight Sword. Alright, so this weapon is a little bit weird for me because I personally used this on my first Faith playthrough. Faith, as the requirement suggests, does absolutely nothing for this weapon. Yeah, I was frustrated too. It's a disappointment, just right out the gate. You do get it very early on, which is nice for some early game Faith builds who maybe want to try it out, but it offers no benefits. It's literally just a straight sword, but with a new Faith requirement, meaning certain builds just aren't going to want to use this thing over a long sword. In addition, it doesn't even perform well late game. If you want a good late game performing straight sword that's a Faith weapon, you have the Sunlight Great Sword, or the Sunlight Sword, and that is 20 times better than this thing easily. When I switched, or rather when I made the switch, it was like night and day, and this thing was night. I put on the Blessed Infusion, and eventually I did try Lightning Infusion, but I could just never manage to squeeze out the damage that I seemed to with other weapons, even ones that aren't even meant to be holy. You do get this thing extremely early on, which is nice, but it's just easily outclassed. And it does actually have, interestingly, a good Hollow Infusion, but its practically sister, the Arni Straight Sword, is just way better in all the ways ever. It's a mediocre sword that's just meant to be a starting weapon to boost you to better options. It's just disappointing, and its scalings don't give above a C in any infusion, including the faith-based ones. Yeah, leave this thing behind. Number 13, Prince Lothric's Holy Sword. Oh man, this thing's just a staff, really. It has abysmal faith scaling for some reason, low overall damage, and doesn't even have holy damage or anti-reanimation properties, despite being called a holy sword. It's pretty disappointing, but it does have 3 good points. The first is the skill, which is really cool and is decent on a good build. The second good point is that it can combine with Lorien's sword to create an actually good weapon. And finally, it has the second longest range of a straight sword other than the Goddard twin swords. It's not bad, but it just can't outperform other entries. And it is especially frustrating when you would only usually pick this up to combine it with Lorien's. So, here you go. Number 12, the Cleric Candlestick. Okay, so this weapon is a spellcaster's gimmick weapon with a straight sword attached to it. If you're an int user with a want for a weapon without infusions, pick this thing. For one, it has good intelligence scaling with an A, but its main benefit comes from the ability to cast spells. Interestingly, it's actually decent, but it'll obviously lose to most staffs on spell scaling. It is one of the best straight swords for int builds, even despite that, and it's pretty cool and able to be achieved early from the Deacons of the Deep. Even so, I wouldn't get it over the spell they have to offer. Oh, and its skill sucks worm-filled dirt in its free time from how useless it is, so don't even think about the skill when you're trying to pick this thing up. Number 11, the Barbed Straight Sword. Okay, so this sword can be gotten early in the Cathedral of the Deep, and honestly, it's not that bad. It is one of 2 straight swords with an 8 bleed buildup, and despite being the worst of the 2, this sword's infusions are actually pretty good and offer more variety than the other of its ilk. You don't have to kill Orbeck either, which is just another cherry on top of the awesome sundae, and I personally think it's slightly underrated, which is only fair since it's abundantly bonkers older brother is so well loved by the community, I'm surprised it wasn't given its own covenant. Even so, bleed build-up on a straight sword is excellent and a good utility, but you're really not going to be using this for anything other than a status build. Number 10, the Longsword. This is the basic straight sword. It's basic, reliable, with good infusions, and a very basic, boring, normal move style and playset. Next. Number 9, the Ringed Knight Straight Sword. Alright, so there's a reason why this sword is in the middle of the list. It has decent damage with a super cool skill that has some practical use, and it's a great innate fire damage weapon. That being said, it doesn't really excel in any category, and it's really just kinda there. The skill does add some good range that honestly is on par with most great swords, but when range is the best part of a weapon skill, we do have some issues. I still personally love this thing to death, but its damage just never really seems to be where I want it to be. Number 8, the Ithral Straight Sword. Do you want Frostbite on a fast attacking weapon? In all honesty, this is your best bet for a good Frostbite build. Primarily because there's no daggers that have innate frostbite, and there's no infusions that give frostbite status. Meaning this is one of the best frostbite weapons because it's one of the only frostbite weapons. In addition to that, this is the earliest frostbite weapon you can get other than one. And the other one is a massive hammer that requires incredibly steep investments. This thing is way better just for the average build. It's probably, in my opinion, the best bet for a frostbite build if you're gonna go for that. However, just because it's a good frostbite weapon doesn't mean that it's good, because frostbite is still a status effect, and in Dark Souls 3, status effects have been absolutely nuked, meaning that despite all of its excellencies and its decent damage, the lack of that frost buildup being its main gimmick means that you're really going to have a tough time in PvE if you're relying off of it. Number 7, the Lothric Knight Sword. Okay, so I don't know how I feel about this one, because I think that this thing should be higher up, but then I look at the ones at the top of this, and I'm like, okay, where would I put this? This thing is an excellent sword. Its main quirk is that it has a 110 crit modifier, which means it's the only sword that actually has a above 100 crit modifier. Pretty great. And, well, other than the short sword, but that can't even beat daggers, so it doesn't count. This sword is definitely one of the best, and it's a very basic sword that can be absolutely oppressive on the right build. My recommendation is to just try it out. It's great on a good holy build and can really, really carry some good weight. It's just super reliable. Number 6, the Sunlight Straight Sword. Alright, so if you want a Faith short sword, this is an excellent option. It has excellent Faith scaling, super reliable, and does good damage, which is all great. However, the best part of this weapon is in the skill. So let's go through this. The skill is the exact same as the spell of the same name, Oath of Sunlight. The difference is that Oath of Sunlight requires you to farm sun coins from Lothric Knights with a 0.2% chance to drop. Offline, farming that is a terrible fate. I mean, all Covenant farming is, but this one is, once again, one of those. Even so, this skill is just as powerful as that spell, but without that time investment. Oh, and did I mention that this skill literally just increases defense and attack by 10%? It's Dark Souls' version of Golden Vow, and it still kicks nerds in the balls before insulting their moms with rhymes so bold they could cause High Lord Wolnir to buckle. I mean, seriously, this thing is an absolute beast. Use it. Number 5, the Morian Blade. So I personally think this thing is just a little bit overrated because it has a very niche playstyle that I personally don't enjoy. So this is one of 2 straight swords that can cause bleed buildup, and this one is the far superior of the other. It has higher damage and does more buildup, unless the other is infused with blood, but what really sets this sword over the edge is its special effect. Similar to the red Tearstone ring, when you hold the sword below 20% HP, you gain a damage buff of 20% for all attacks. Oh, and this and the ring stack together. Basically, using a build meant for this weapon, you can get some serious damage. Not to mention the blade is probably one of the coolest looking in the game, so you're going to be looking fashionable while drinking the blood of your opponents. Number 4, the Dark Soul Sword. Oh, not the Dark Soul Sword, just the Dark Sword. I know, I was disappointed too. Alright, so I personally believe that this sword is a minor upgrade to the broadsword. Now, no, I know what I said just sounds crazy, but I absolutely love this thing. For one, the design is super cool, and this sword is the only straight sword with Stomp, which, if you don't know, gives it incredible hyper armor to tank attacks. Stomp isn't perfect, but it's still good. This thing can get an A scaling with the majority infusions, it has throttled AR, and the skill gives that great hyper armor. And this sword can be infused. The fact that this thing can be infused is just astronomically fun, for one. That being said, even with my extreme bias, it does objectively lose to the broadsword in a lot of ways. It's good, but when you have the death machine being your closest competition, you're gonna look sad in comparison. Number 3, the Goddard Twin Swords. Oh my gosh, so I actually originally had this as my number 1 on this list, and that was before I looked into some of the other options. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, why would you put this at number 1? Because it's a paired weapon. Paired weapons are absolutely busted, and this one has a super fun, unique moveset, and different types of damage in that moveset. You're doing both standard and thrusting, which is both great damage types. However, that's not all that makes this thing an absolute beast. For one, you can infuse them, which means that you can get status on them and therefore you have good status buildup. Still, I would personally use the curved swords, paired curved swords, or the brigand daggers for that, but if you want a good status build, this one's pretty decent. And the thing is, this thing has range. In fact, that's actually its biggest benefit. This is the longest ranged straight sword in the game, just straight up. It's incredible, because you don't even need to have them paired to do great damage and get that range benefit, because you can hold one in one hand and have a shield in the other. Basically, this thing is super versatile with incredible amounts of potential that you can milk out of it. The spin slash skill is only okay, but when a weapon like this can be infused and still get S scalings with some of the infusions, it's time to admit that these things do need to be convicted of a felony. On top of all that, they can just straight up be buffed. I don't think I'd have to discuss exactly why these things are incredible, especially when they are already used by so many people. Number 2, the broadsword. Okay, this thing is basic, and it is still so incredibly good that it makes me physically ill. It gets A on a good amount of infusions, has the best AR out of the straight swords on most builds, is picked up really early, and is insanely reliable. I often find myself falling back on this bad boy for so many reasons. It doesn't need range to be good, and the fact that it has the highest AR of all the straight swords, when its best scaling's only reaching A, shows exactly how cruel this weapon is. Alright, so now it is time for number 1. And if you were paying attention earlier, I actually mentioned this weapon. The number 1 choice is Arnie's straight sword. Okay, so hold on, wait a little second. I know you're mad that the broadsword isn't here, but there's a good reason behind that. And that is because this sword is slept on, primarily because of what it scales with. This sword is weird, to say the least. It doesn't scale with, well, doesn't scale as well with your physical stats or with intelligence or faith. No, this thing scales on luck, which is a barely used stat in Dark Souls 3. Even so, this thing is absolutely unfair. So, as I previously mentioned, its main quirk is that it primarily scales off of the luck stat rather than any other, which makes it the luck build sword. Already incredible. The luck stat is so good when scaling with the sword that it is considered unfair by most players who have tried using it. But that is not the only aspect that makes this sword brain-numbingly insane. Because this sword has a 10% damage bonus to reanimated enemies, and will prevent them from reviving, which is just absolutely incredible, especially when you're exploring places like the Catacombs of Carthus, or just undead enemies in general. This sword basically is a blessed sword without any of the damage fall off, and the negatives of a blessed sword. Oh, and if it wasn't broken enough, it also gives you the health regen like a blessed weapon. This thing needs to be recognized for its absolute insanity, especially considering it is the number 1 luck weapon in the entire game. Just try it out. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Obviously, you're gonna have to build up luck, and, you know, who wants to do that? But this thing just has so many niche benefits that I really can't think of a reason to not try and use it. Alright, and that's my ranking. So I made this list a decent way back, but despite my semi-controversial top pick, I find myself going back to this list just because of how right I feel like my takes for some of these are. I think my only real point of mistake was with Valorheart, but that's more likely my very heavy bias speaking. Anyways, I appreciate you all for watching the video thus far, so thank you for feeding my insatiable delusions. As always, happy hunting.